It was another day of fighting for the Philippine army against the rebels who had been terrorizing the area. They were in the middle of the jungle, surrounded by tall trees and thick undergrowth. The air was hot and humid, and the soldiers were exhausted from days of battling the enemy. Suddenly, over the radio crackled a message that changed everything. A high-value target had been spotted in the area, someone important to the rebels, and it was up to the Philippine army to take him down. The soldiers were divided into two groups, one led by Captain Lucero and the other by First Sergeant Avellino. Their mission, to find and eliminate the rebel leader. But the jungle was dense and the soldiers were tired. As they moved through the thick foliage, it was hard to keep going. The men stumbled over roots and fallen branches, and the oppressive humidity sapped their energy. But they pressed on, driven by their duty and their need to end the reign of terror that had been gripping the area for weeks. Then suddenly, movement in the underbrush. The soldiers froze, their eyes scanning the trees. A pair of eyes glinted back at them from the shadows. It was a sniper. He was well camouflaged, his body blending seamlessly with the surrounding foliage. But the soldiers were trained for this. They moved in formation, their weapons at the ready, and soon the sniper was surrounded. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of opening fire, the soldiers hesitated. They recognized the sniper. It was Corporal Benji, one of their own. And he wasn't just any sniper. He was the best the Philippine army had. He was known for his skill, his accuracy, and his bravery in the face of danger. But how did he get here? How did he wind up in enemy territory? Corporal Benji was a soldier like any other, except for one thing. He had a special gift, an uncanny ability to disappear into the landscape, to become one with the trees and the undergrowth. It was this skill that made him the perfect sniper. He could lie and wait for hours, days even, without being detected. He could track his prey for miles, and when he pulled the trigger, he was deadly accurate. His rifle was an extension of his hand, and the bullet he fired was swift and silent, taking down his target before they even knew what hit them. But now he was in enemy territory, and the soldiers were torn. On the one hand, they had orders to eliminate the rebel leader at any cost. On the other hand, they couldn't bear the thought of firing on one of their own, no matter how valuable he might be to the enemy. It was a tough call, and they didn't have much time to make it. The rebel leader was moving through the jungle, his men close behind him. If they didn't strike now, they might never get another chance. Finally, Captain Lucero spoke up. He was the leader, after all, and it was his responsibility to make the tough calls. He ordered his men to stand down, to lower their weapons, and to approach Corporal Benji cautiously. As they moved forward, they called out to him, trying to get him to respond. Corporal Benji didn't budge. He remained motionless, his body still and silent. It was like he was a ghost, a phantom of the jungle. Then, suddenly, he moved. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet whizzed past Captain Lucero's ear, and he felt a cold dread creep up his spine. This was no ordinary sniper. This was a soldier who had turned against them, who had become the very thing they were fighting against. And then it hit him. Corporal Benji wasn't just a sniper. He was their most valuable asset, the one who had been slipping through the enemy's fingers time and again. He was the reason the rebels had been able to launch so many attacks, the reason they had been able to evade the Philippine army's efforts to capture or kill them. And now he was on the other side, fighting against them. It was a devastating blow, a betrayal that cut deep. But there was no time to dwell on it. The rebel leader was close behind Corporal Benji, and if they didn't do something quickly, he would get away. Captain Lucero barked orders, and the soldiers fanned out, forming a tight circle around Corporal Benji. He was trapped now, and the soldiers closed in, their weapons raised. But as they got closer, they saw something that made them hesitate. Corporal Benji wasn't just a traitor. He was a man in pain. His uniform was torn and dirty, his body bearing the scars of battle. and as they looked into his eyes, they saw a haunted look there, a deep sadness that made them question everything they thought they knew about him. He was their brother in arms, a comrade they had fought alongside, and as they closed in, they saw not an enemy, but a friend in need. And so they lowered their weapons, and instead of ending his life, they offered him water, food, and medical aid. Corporal Benji was taken back, surprised by their compassion. He had expected to be shot, to be killed where he stood, but here they were offering him kindness and understanding. In that moment, he knew he had made a terrible mistake. He had let his emotions get the better of him, and he had betrayed everything he had been trained for, everything he had believed in. He had turned against his country, his people, his friends, and now he was paying the price. As the soldiers helped him up, he looked into their eyes and saw not hatred, but pity. He saw not anger, but sadness. He saw not fear, but respect. And in that moment, he knew he had been forgiven. The Philippine army had won a victory that day, not just against the rebels, but against themselves, against their own demons. Hey, they had shown restraint when they could have easily taken a life. They had shown compassion when they could have shown only hate. They had shown humanity when they could have shown only war. And it was a victory that echoed far beyond the jungle, a victory for all of mankind. They carried Corporal Benji out of the jungle, and as he walked among them, he felt their stares on him, their whispers in his ear. He heard them talking about him, about what he had done, about who he was, but he didn't care. He had made his mistake, but he was grateful that they had given him a second chance. As they reached the edge of the jungle, Corporal Benji looked back at the trees, at the place where he had been hiding, at the place where he had betrayed his country, And as he looked, he saw not just trees, but faces. He saw not just foliage, but memories, He saw not just shadows, but the ghosts of his past. He had been a sniper, the best the Philippine army had. He had been a traitor, the enemy's most valuable asset. But now he was neither. He was a soldier again, a member of the Philippine army, a brother in arms. And as he walked on, he knew he had a long way to go, a long way to atone for his sins, a long way to earn back the trust that he had betrayed. But he was ready to walk that path, to take those steps, to do whatever it took to make things right, because he was a soldier, and soldiers don't give up. Soldiers don't break. Soldiers endure. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the jungle floor, the soldiers made camp. The day's battle was over, but the war was far from won. Yet there was a sense of camaraderie among them, a bond that had been forged in the fires of combat, tempered by the sweat and blood of their shared experiences. They were a team, a unit, a brotherhood, and they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The crackling fire cast dancing shadows on the faces of the weary soldiers. They shared stories of their lives before the army, of their families and friends, of their dreams and aspirations. There was laughter, there was sadness, there was joy, there was sorrow. They talked about everything and nothing, about the big things and the small things, about the past, the present, and the future. They talked and talked late into the night, their voices echoing through the jungle, carrying on the wind. For these soldiers, the jungle was more than just a place of combat. It was a home away from home, a refuge, a sanctuary. They slept under the stars, their bodies aching, their minds racing. But as the night wore on, the fatigue of the day began to fade away, and they drifted off to sleep, lulled by the sounds of the jungle. The crickets chirping, the frogs croaking, the leaves rustling. It was a lullaby that was both soothing and strange, a melody that was both familiar and unknown. In the morning, they woke up to the sound of birdsong. The sky was clear, the air was fresh, and the jungle seemed to be smiling down at them. They packed up their camp, leaving no trace of their presence, and moved out into the dense undergrowth. As they walked, they kept a sharp lookout for any sign of danger, for they knew that the jungle was a treacherous place, full of hidden enemies and deadly surprises. But they were prepared, their weapons at the ready, their senses on high alert. And so they moved through the jungle, the Philippine army, the best of the best, the bravest of the brave, the defenders of their country, protectors of their people, okay? And as they went, they carried with them the lessons of the day before, the importance of compassion, the power of forgiveness, the strength of unity. They were soldiers, yes, but they were also human beings, and they knew that humanity was not just about war, it was about life.